Attorney General Eric Holder was back on the Hill this week telling the House Appropriations Committee that as soon as ATF's Operation Fast and Furious was brought to his attention, he stopped it. He pounded his hand on the table and he said, "I stopped it." Your reaction?
Well, my reaction is, first of all, it's a pretty ambiguous date of when he, quote, discovered it. Did he discover it when he flew to Mexico and announced this expanded programs that he was going to do? Did he discover it when Lanny Brewer and Weinstein and Cunningham and all the people down the chain of command were setting this up, orchestrating it, overseeing it, and granting wiretaps in this process? Did he stop it when they were before Brian Terry died? No. Did there come a day in which they had already denied any knowledge of gun walking, claimed they never did it as a matter of policy, lied to Congress in no uncertain terms, both in oral testimony and written testimony, and then he stopped it? Well, of course. Unfortunately, the definition of incompetence is doing something far after it has no effect.
Mm-hmm. And as you said at the top of this, the Attorney General says he stopped it, but we are just learning about another case involving a suspect named Manuel Barba, who was just sentenced for trafficking a gun that was linked to the murder of ICE agent Jaime Zapata. Are we seeing a pattern here by the ATF?
Oh, absolutely. And in fairness to the ATF, they have every right to ask for all kinds of tactics and directions, but it's up to the adult leaders throughout the site. You know, the Treasury. The Treasury officials they work with, the justice officials they work with, and all of the other presidential appointees to contain, particularly the use of failed programs. And of course, gun walking has been shown repeatedly to not work. It is not a traceable event, and people knew it before this president came and put this kind of a program on steroids.
Mm-hmm. And Manuel Barba, the suspect, he was on the ATF's radar for months before a warrant was issued for his arrest. In fact, they knew that he was removing the serial numbers from these guns that were going to Mexico.
Exactly. A serious felony of removing serial numbers, a serious felony of gun trafficking, facilitation, the money laundering, everything that goes together. They didn't just have a, quote, straw purchase type case against him. They had real hard 20-year sentence type felonies, and yet they left him on the street to let his practices continue, and ultimately Jaime Zapata is dead because of that. In that case, and the same can be said of Brian Terry, where they not only facilitated the gun trafficking, but ultimately have granted immunity to the higher ranking of the people involved in it.
Mm-hmm. And you have sent a letter to the Attorney General asking for documents and for questions to be answered about the death of Agent Jaime Zapata.
We have, and the expectation is we'll be stonewalled or dribbed and drabbed small pieces of information exactly as we have for more than a year in Fast and Furious. You understand that the Inspector General, the internal auditor, has been granted 80,000 pages of discovery. Well, we've had to issue multiple subpoenas to get less than 6,000. We've had people resign and take the fifth. It's very clear that justice is not cleaning house, and little by little we're having to force the, if you will, the outing of the responsible parties. We intend to do that until there's a full house cleaning at justice.
Mm-hmm. And when I was looking at the questions you were asking, among them, you asked about whether any gun dealers contacted the ATF about gun sales to suspects they knew were working with Barba. Do you have any indication that, again, just like we saw on Fast and Furious, that gun dealers contacted the ATF, but they were told to let the guns walk?
Well, we have indications that there were concerned individuals who made reports. We're getting to the actual documentation of whether or not they were ordered to let them walk post-report. But understand, if someone says, I've got a straw purchase and here's the characteristics, and I'm very concerned, they're going above and beyond the law. They're doing what we expect federally licensed gun dealers to do, which is not just do the law, but use their judgment and their history of working with legitimate gun owners and gun purchasers and separating the two. We believe in this case that was done by the federally licensed gun dealers. Mm-hmm. And once again, ATF is going to try to blame the gun owner, the Second Amendment personnel, and more importantly, blame the gun dealers. And that can only be for one purpose, and that is to make once again an attack on the Second Amendment.
You know, and Holder sat up there this week and he talked about, hey, you know what, this investigation, he didn't mention your name, but you know it's you he was talking about. He says it's all about politics, about threatening him with contempt. Are you still moving forward with contempt charges against him?
We are. The Justice Department delivered 300 pages, fairly small amount, and promised us more, and we said, fine. By the time we go to contempt, we want to have done everything we can do to avoid it, to work with the Justice Department, to convince them that they need to do it. But our patience is limited. We are reaching a point where, for exactly the reason that the Attorney General cited, I do not want to be up on the Hill seeking contempt against a high-ranking appointee of the President in the days and weeks before the election. So I've made it clear that I'm not going to let this run into the election. It's already run more than a year. My intention is to get this done before the primary season is over so that, in fact, I don't interfere with the election, but rather get the discovery we deserve, get the administration understanding that they work for the American people and we are the American people's representatives.
And you don't want to interfere, you say, but my gosh, shouldn't it be a campaign issue?
Well, it already is a campaign issue. What we want to do is make sure the legitimate, hardworking people who are our investigators on the Oversight Committee get the answers they need so we can move on. During the election season, that last 6 or 7 months, our committee has historically, under my leadership and under some of my predecessors, we've tried to work on issues that are outside of politics so that we're not unreasonably be accused of politicking. There's plenty of waste and fraud in government that we can go after that doesn't go directly to the door of the president or his cabinet officers. This one clearly does go to the front steps of the White House. It does go to Eric Holder's outer offices at a minimum, and we need to get it cleared before we get into campaign season. But having said that, your listeners certainly can feel free to know this president has full confidence in this Attorney General. Well, every day you report the absurdity of Fast and Furious and the way this Attorney General is handling it.